problem is with the shuttle's robot arm. Its wrist joint has lost part of its control. It can't move left and right. That means the spacewalking astronauts can't perform one of the most important tasks slated for today. In fact, the most important task of the spacewalk. The shuttle was supposed to have picked up a satellite out of its cargo bay and set it slowly spinning to do a test, seeing whether the astronauts with the jet backpack could have matched the satellite's spinning speed and then latched onto it. But the arm has been cradled. It's out of commission for the rest of the flight. And now Bob Stewart is happy that he at least has some extra time for sightseeing.
Where are we now, Vance? Still on the coast of Africa? Well, that's somewhere, Bob, just coming up on the west coast.
Another problem was discovered by Bruce McCandless just a few minutes ago. A bracket that supported the spacewalker's slide wires had come loose. That could have blocked the payload bay doors, and that would have prevented the doors from being closed on landing day. But now that's been fixed. The other brackets have been checked out. They're in good shape, and a busted TV camera has been switched out. So now, with the biggest chore of the spacewalk scrubbed, the astronauts are going ahead anyway, trying their docking with a stationary target instead of the moving one that was supposed to have highlighted today's spacewalk. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
CBS News, I'm Charles Osgood. We've not begun their second spacewalk, but they're missing an arm, as Jay Jones explains.
Challenger's remote arm has a broken wrist, and Mission Control has canceled an important part of today's spacewalk. McCandless and Stewart were supposed to practice docking with a dummy satellite, rehearse for a future satellite repair mission. The 50-foot mechanical arm was to lift the rotating pallet satellite over the cargo bay so the astronauts could jet up to it, synchronize with the satellite's spin, and link up. But forget it. The arm is back in its cradle. Its wrist joint has failed. It won't move right or left. But that does not stop the spacewalk. McCandless and Stewart have been backpacking in space around the open cargo bay, performing maintenance chores. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Wrist on Challenger's arm won't move left or right. That problem developed just as astronauts Bruce McCandless and Bob Stewart prepared to crawl out of the shuttle airlock this morning on their second spacewalk.
We are electing not to do any further check out of the arm. We would like you to cradle it, please.
Okay, Jerry, we'll cradle the arm. That's what we were expecting to hear, I'm afraid.
So the arm will not pick up a pallet satellite mounted in the shuttle's cargo bay this morning. The satellite will not be set spinning, and the astronauts will not have a chance to use one of their jet backpacks to latch on to a slowly rotating target. That was supposed to have been a simulation of the satellite rescue set for the next shuttle flight. But the spacewalk goes on. Bruce McCandless now flying the jet backpack. He'll be latching up with stationary targets instead of a moving one. He has already discovered and repaired a loose slide wire bracket that could have blocked the Challenger's payload bay doors from closing. It's a discovery that McCandless called startling. Later in this spacewalk, a couple of hours from now, the astronauts expecting a phone call from President Reagan. But right now, they're running behind time, even though the most important goal of this spacewalk has been scrapped. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News. As the astronauts fly around Challenger, the blue and white Earth rolling by below, the robot arm lies in its cradle with a broken wrist. That has prevented astronaut Ron McNair from grabbing a pallet satellite inside the cargo bay and setting it spinning so that the spacewalking crewmen could dock up with a slowly turning target. That was the most important goal of this morning's spacewalk, and now it has been canceled. But the spacewalk itself is on. Bruce McCandless now flying around the Challenger, docking with a stationary instead of a moving target.
Well, I can see shooting passing by out there. Good morning, Houston. Bob, when you run the lane, you shine your flashlight at him.
Well, Bob Stewart, meanwhile, has pulled off the first backpack recharging on a spacewalk. Later, he'll simulate the refueling of a satellite. And later on this morning, a conversation with the president during the spacewalk. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
second day of spacewalks is underway around the Challenger. Marines pack up in Beirut, their debarkation orders yet to come. Good morning, this is Reed Collins with the CBS World News Roundup. A limp-wristed space arm has put a crimp in today's spacewalks from the Shuttle Challenger, but they're underway nonetheless. Jay Jones reports from the Kennedy Space Center.
While behind him the Earth raced by, a view of the blue Atlantic Ocean embroidered with white clouds, astronaut Bruce McCandless was doing a spaceman's work. He and colleague Robert Stewart are out in Challenger's open cargo bay on their second spacewalk of this mission. Their visored spacesuits on, taking turns on a jet-powered backpack. But gremlins have sabotaged Challenger once more, and the astronauts are not able to rehearse the planned link-up with a rotating pallet satellite hung out on the end of the shuttle's mechanical arm. The wrist joint of that arm is broken. Earlier, on a maintenance inspection of the cargo bay, McCandless found a loose bracket.
One of our operational slidewire brackets has come unpinned. Look at this, guys.
Roger, Bruce, we can see it on the ground, too. Is a pip in there?
Pip pin is there, and I will reinstall it, but it's still a little startling.
Discovery of that bracket was fortunate. Mission Control says it could have prevented the closing of the cargo bay doors and caused a big headache at re-entry time. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
This was supposed to have been a test, a practice for the rescue of a slowly spinning satellite that's supposed to be repaired on the next shuttle flight. Challenger's arm this morning was supposed to have hoisted out of the cargo bay a pallet satellite and set it slowly spinning to see if the astronauts with their jet backpacks could dock up with it, just a simulation for the real thing next April. But the shuttle's wrist won't move left or right. They don't know why, so the test has been scrapped. And now the spacewalking astronauts have had to settle for hitching up with stationary targets. Nonetheless, Bob Stewart and Bruce McCandless are having a little bit of fun outside, getting in more time on their flying manned maneuvering units.
You look like you feel right at home with that thing, Bob. I do, man. It's really easy to fly. It's really a nice little machine. I just wish it had a little bit more gas on it. It's kind of like a P-38, you know. It's a great little machine, but sure does need longer legs.
It's very lucky that this morning's spacewalk wasn't scratched entirely, because shortly after he crawled out of the hatch, Bruce McCandless noticed that a bracket had slid into the way of the payload bay doors. That bracket might have prevented the closing of those doors on landing day. McCandless fixed it up, and now everything's back to normal on the payload bay. The astronauts flying around outside for their second set of spacewalks outside the Challenger. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
What do you think? I don't know. It works. Maybe this one will work.
I got to catch that 10 millimeter cinema 360 during the next night pass. Got a little bit too bright on me, and really ran the f-stops up too high. You can see we have about 1,000 cameras around, and it's kind of tough getting around all of them, but we're getting them in.
Roger, looks like you're doing a great job up there, Ron. I was going to say that it looked like you had a camera shop going.
It's pretty busy.
Astronaut McCandless working at the Special Equipment Stowage Assembly Box. And Stewart working with his starboard MMU.
Getting live Downing TV pictures being Bob Stewart at this time, securing his starboard MMU at the conclusion of his activities for this morning. This is
Vance?
Yeah, go ahead.
You're on ML86D. Is main A and D MMU starboard? Here's A and D to the open.
You're open.
descent for the first minute.
Okay, Vance, on ML 86B, roll Delta. Main A and B, MMU starboard, A and B circuit breakers closed.
Missing booster. This is darling.
Reattaching okay there?
Yeah. It's just that the hand wheel had held it in and backed out. And when I put a little bit of a load on it, bingo.
I can going down that slide wire to get it.
Maybe a little bit longer time. Basically what happened is I was on the port slide wire, and my cable came across the RMS shoulder brace joint there, and it wouldn't slide. And it's only 35 feet long, so I ran out of wire where I did. But that was great. It gave us a little bit of minus X. It's just it right up.
He walked back slowly.
Yeah. Okay, Dr. Stewart, that is tightened about as tight as I dare without worrying about breaking the screws wrist or something. Okay. Still not doing helmet TV.
Not again, Bruce, but with no luck. Do you have it on now?
I think this change is looking good.
Give it another try.
Okay. Wait till I get back over to the CBSA, I can get out the hammer and hit myself on the head with a hammer if you think that would help.
You can do it now. You don't have to wait.
No, all right.
Hey, Bruce, what are you looking at now? I am seeing something on the camera, but I can't make any sense on it.
Caesar.
Getting rather a lot of static on the communication at this time, but we'll stay with it. Bob Stewart and Bruce McCandless are both in the payload bay in camera at this time. Both working with foot restraints. Remember that Bob Stewart had some problem in fitting his boot into the foot restraint, and after returning from the first DVA, it seemed that his boot was shaping up slightly differently when his suit was inflated.
Storage assembly in which the hydrazine experiment is stored.
I think a note that the Velcro on these butterfly straps is coming loose. It's not a very good security device the way it is now. Oh, the butterfly flap straps are supposed to be the security for the butterflies. They're supposed to be the lock for the oversetter on the
closed. Closed, both of them, on both MMUs for closeout.
That is pushed on, but closed to flow, right?
That's correct, Bruce.
Yeah, that's what I thought the configuration ought to be. Well, that's the way it is, isn't it? Now, Bruce, on, give me the cue lights and we'll worry about that.
Bruce, there's quite a bit of static now, but the next thing on the timeline is to go to MMU prep, port MMU, with the thruster cue light extension and camera from the starboard MMU.
Up a lot of static at the moment on communications with Bruce McCandless and Bob Stewart in Payload Bay. They're at work at the moment on the hydrazine test. This is a simulation of
Able to get anything up on your EMU TV. My TV worked on that same frequency, but I can't get yours up.
I don't think the thing is working. I put the battery in last night and I tried it and I got a green light. Not getting the green light today.
And it's time for status check. How about you?
Yeah, I'm working. MEV 3 plus 3, 3. Turn left 3 plus 5, 5.
And Challenger Houston, we'd like to get sublimator pressure, please, and temp valve setting.
MEV 334, time off 350, 52% power, 69% octane. Sublimator pressure is 2.6.
2.6. And, yeah, what's your sublimator pressure, Bruce? If you don't mind.
I'll do it for you in a minute.
Challenger Houston for Bruce.
Again?
Roger, Bruce. Got a couple questions for you.
Go ahead.
First one is, did you reinstall the tether on the CISA foot restraint? And secondly, we're questioning the status of your EMU TV. It's one of the things we'd like to have for your engineering evaluation.
Negative, I did not reinstall the tether on the foot restraint. I did take the spas wrench, however, and really torque all the bolts down now. It's on there tightly.
Okay, copy that. We would like to reinstall the adjustable wrist tether prior to closing out the cargo bay. And what is the status of your TV?
Well, do you want an adjustable wrist tether on the CDSA foot restraint, which is exactly the identical thing and didn't last with one?
Stand by.
Bolt came loose. That's what astronaut Bruce McCandless theorizes. Whatever the reason, a foot restraint mounted in Challenger's cargo bay started to float away in space. The astronauts asked for permission to go out and grab it. But while they were waiting for an answer from the ground, Commander Vance Brand decided to take matters into his own hands. They fired up Challenger's maneuvering jets to move the shuttle over next to the floating footpad. His backpack was already stowed away, so McCandless had to quickly slide down a guide wire along the edge of the payload bay to snatch up the foot restraint that was briefly lost in space. And cheers broke out in mission control.
Well, we deliver may have been the STS-5 crew model, but we pick up also.
But a busted joint in the wrist of the robot arm has canceled a test that was supposed to have the astronauts trying to dock with a Pallet satellite. That satellite was supposed to have been spinning on the end of the arm. It was an important test for that satellite rescue mission scheduled for next April. But they have managed to simulate part of a satellite refueling operation. And about an hour from now, they should be hearing from the White House for a few words of congratulations from President Reagan. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
CBS News, I'm Douglas Edwards. There are reports that American ships have...
CBS News, this is Jackie Judd. A McCandless turned a small accident into a significant achievement today. A foot restraint came loose from the Space Shuttle Challenger and began floating away from the spacecraft. Commander Vance Brand maneuvered Challenger closer to the restraint. McCandless, attached to a safety line, reached outside and picked up the piece of equipment. This was the first time that astronauts have been able to make such a retrieval in space. There was a disappointment earlier today. During spacewalks, McCandless and Robert Stewart were supposed to dock with the rotating box as a dress rehearsal for the next mission when an orbiting satellite is supposed to be repaired by astronauts. But Challenger's rotating arm wasn't working, so the astronauts had to link up instead with a stationary object.
Houston, the President of the United States.
They spent about 20 minutes in Challenger's cargo bay maneuvering into just the right TV shot for their phone call from President Reagan.
That is just great. You've really opened a new era for the world in space with this mission. You've shown both our commercial partners and our foreign partners who play an important role in this and other missions to come that man does have the tools to work effectively in space.
But one of their tools didn't work effectively today. Challenger's 50-foot robot arm suffered a broken wrist, so it could not pick up a Pallet satellite in the cargo bay and slowly spin it around. And that prevented the astronauts from test docking with a rotating target, an important practice for next April's flight to rescue a spinning satellite. And a big disappointment, one that might even have canceled today's spacewalk altogether. But as the sun rose over Houston, astronauts Bruce McCandless and Bob Stewart were once again floating and flying outside the shuttle.
Good morning, Houston.
It's lucky the spacewalk was not canceled. McCandless discovered that a loose bracket would have blocked the way for the closing of Challenger's cargo bay doors, making re-entry impossible. But the problem was fixed. And so was the problem with the foot restraint that started to float away in space. Commander Vance Brand didn't wait for instructions. He fired up the shuttle's maneuvering rockets fast. McCandless had already pulled off his flying backpack, so he had to quickly slide down a guide wire and reach over the edge of the shuttle to snatch up the nearly lost piece of equipment. And mission control broke out in cheers. But it was all in a day's work for Vance Brand and Bruce McCandless. And now, with the last unique highlight of their flight behind them, the five-man crew is preparing for sleep. Tomorrow is mostly a day of cleaning up before flying in for what NASA hopes will be a Saturday morning landing at the Kennedy Space Center. And the latest forecast is good. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
Well, here's the... CBS News, I'm Douglas Edwards. flew about the Shuttle Challenger in jetpacks again today after failure of the shuttle's mechanical arm ruined a key part of the spacewalk rehearsal for the rescue of a satellite in April. Jay Jones has today's story at the Kennedy Space Center.
Flight Director John Cox says the second spacewalk was beautiful, and he calls the failure of the mechanical arm a minor disappointment. Cox says Bruce McCandless did plenty of hard docking with a device in the cargo bay, and rehearsal for repairing the disabled Solar Max satellite on the next mission was adequate. Cox also says Commander Vance Brand wasn't just playing around when he went after a piece of hardware that floated out of the cargo bay.
We picked up the bonus of rehearsal for an EMU rescue, which we had worked in the procedures and trained for, and Vance took that off and chased down with that foot restraint for the Travis-Floyd. Did a super job on that, so that helped quite a bit. That was not in the plans, but it was nice to see that all that work paid off.
An MMU rescue would be picking up a backpacking astronaut. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
Good news came this morning with another spacewalk capturing the eye and ear of the country. That included America's leading citizen, President Reagan.
I understand, we had an opportunity this morning, an unexpected or unscheduled sake, maneuvering the shuttle and making a recovery of an object in space.
That object that the president referred to was the manipulator foot restraint, designed to allow the astronauts to ride the mechanical arm like a cherry picker. It floated away, but Commander Vance Brand flew the shuttle to it, and spacewalker Bruce McCandless grabbed it. The second half of the positive news comes from the head of the shuttle program, Lieutenant General James Abramson. The president has called for an $8 billion space station program to begin, and Johnson Center managers were wondering what their role would be in that. The general gave them a hint as to who would be the managing space center.
The administrator indicated that, in all likelihood, that would probably be Johnson.
Chris Peterson, KTRH News, live at the Johnson Space Center.
CBS News, I'm Dallas Townsend. The American destroyers aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger are now in a sleep period after another busy day, highlighted by the second untethered walk in space by Bruce McCandless and Robert Stewart.
Houston's 12-year-old.
Yuri Andropov of the Soviet Union is dead at the age of 69. A voluntary evacuation of Americans has been announced in Beirut. Good morning, this is Reed Collins with the CBS World News Roundup. Brezhnev did, and now so has Andropov. But the shuttle mission remains a major story, and Judy Muller reports from the Kennedy Space Center.
In a news conference from space this morning, the 5 members of the Challenger crew reflected on the ups and downs of their mission so far. Commander Vance Brand said the failure of the 2 satellites was an extreme disappointment, but all agreed that the history-making tetherless spacewalks were the mission's highlight. Astronaut Bruce McCandless.
In human terms, I was impressed by the spectacular panorama that I could see through the wide field of view afforded by the helmet. I recall seeing the east coast of Florida go by, and the view was simply spectacular.
And the east coast of Florida is right where they'll be returning tomorrow morning if all goes as planned for a first-ever landing back at the Florida launch site. Vance Brand.
We're definitely ready. Just a question of will the weather be ready.
Forecasters now say the weather is looking good for a landing tomorrow, with light winds, scattered clouds, and little chance of rain. Judy Muller, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
The astronauts did express some extreme disappointment at the fact that those 2 satellites didn't kick out of the shuttle the way they were supposed to. Well, in fact, they did kick out of the shuttle the way they were supposed to, but the problem was they didn't kick into the proper orbit. Vance Brand said that was disappointing.
We're very excited to pull off up here. I think we feel there's been some adversity, but a lot's been accomplished.
And Bruce McCandless, for the first time, was able to describe just what it felt like to fly those jet-powered manned maneuvering units.
being in an observation-type helicopter or other bubble-nose airplane going at Mach 25. It was really spectacular. The ground and the continents and the oceans just sped by you with outstanding visibility.
But Bob Stewart's description was just a little bit more technical. He said it was more like trying to fly or testing out a piece of equipment as an engineer. Vance Brand quickly added,
But in the cabin here, they call each other Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers.
the first press conference involving all of the Challenger astronauts on this flight. They're scheduled to return tomorrow morning, and all of them say they're ready to come home. The landing at the Cape is scheduled for tomorrow morning. The weather forecast, the latest, is very good. Live at the Johnson Space Center, Doug Miller, KTRH News.
Shuttle Challenger have expressed satisfaction with the progress of their 8-day flight, but they said the loss of 2 expensive communication satellites was a big disappointment. The Challenger crew held a news conference this morning with reporters on the ground. Now this.
CBS News, this is Jackie Judd. CBS News, I'm Vicki Kelly. Is due to come home in the morning. Forecasters say the odds are 4-1 that the weather will cooperate, allowing the shuttle to land at the Kennedy Space Center. The first time a shuttle ship would have ever landed at its launch site in Florida.
Friday was a relatively easy day for the Challenger crew. After 2 satellite deployments, a day of rendezvous maneuvers, and 2 days of spacewalks, the astronauts' most demanding task was to answer questions from reporters in Houston for half an hour. They talked about the highs of their flight, the 2 strolls in space and the use of those jet backpacks, and they spoke of the lows, the news from the ground that the 2 commercial satellites were lost in space somewhere. But perhaps the most interesting item they touched on during the conference was their perspective of the world from 165 miles up. Previous crews have made remarks about the planet having no borders and how the environment appeared to be visibly deteriorating. The 4 rookie flyers on this mission issued the expected oohs and ahs when it was their turn, but Commander Vance Brand was a little more incisive.
We talk about overcrowding, and we crossed vast oceans and deserts and mountain areas. To us, the largest cities look like very small areas.
Brand says there's so much unused land available on the planet, some efforts may want to be expended toward developing some of it. So with all of their work behind them and the knowledge that none of the glitches in the flight were their fault, the shuttle astronauts are asleep now. They'll awaken in about an hour when they'll begin their final checks to land at Cape Canaveral, Florida. It's the first time a shuttle landing has been tried there, and it's vital to the shuttle program that it succeed. Launching and landing from the same point is a cost-saving measure for sure, but more importantly, it buys time. When shuttle flights become a bi-monthly occurrence in the near future, the space agency will be hard-pressed to service the 4-ship fleet and keep them in the air. The ability to land the spacecraft practically in the hangar will make that job a whole lot easier. So now it's on to the Solar Maximum satellite repair mission in April. NASA says it may hold off on the previously announced April 4th launch date for the flight. It seems the failing satellite now in orbit is not exactly where it's supposed to be. The agency may wait for it to arrive at its predicted spot before commencing a rescue repair mission. Chris Peterson, KTRH News at the Johnson Space Center.
Future shuttle missions will not necessarily be longer, but more frequent. The superintendent of Houston schools would like children in this city in school more frequently. Longer.
CBS News, I'm Vicki Kelly. The Shuttle Challenger have had their final scheduled wake-up call in space. This was their alarm clock from Mission Control in Houston about a half an hour ago. The astronauts are now making preparations to come home, ending their 8-day mission in space. Landing at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida is set for a little more than 6 hours from now.
CBS News, I'm Bill Whitney. President preparations for their landing a little more than 3 hours from now at Cape Canaveral, the place they started from 8 days ago. It'll be the first time a shuttle hasn't landed in the California desert. At the Cape, Bill Williams has a critical job this morning. He has to keep Challenger's runway clear of critters like alligators and wild pigs. Well, suppose one wanders out.
We'll try to intimidate him off the runway, first of all, with a a vehicle. And otherwise, if we can't do that, we'll physically remove them, or I hate to say it, but we will shoot them to get them off the runway. They're prepared to do that.
The hazards of space travel. Bill Whitney, CBS News. CBS News, I'm Bill Whitney. Space Shuttle Challenger is almost home. Jay Jones is following developments.
We're about 15 minutes away from deorbit burn. Challenger will be turned to tail first and fire its main engines. This will have a braking effect, reducing the spacecraft's velocity below what's required for maintaining orbit, and Challenger will begin falling to Earth. The deorbit burn takes place over the Indian Ocean off the northwestern coast of Australia. Just about an hour after that, minutes after dawn, Challenger is to touch down here at Cape Canaveral. Landing expected to be at 7:16 a.m. Eastern Time, marking the first time a manned spacecraft returns to its launch site. The shuttle will settle down on a 3-mile-long runway. The weather is almost ideal, some ground fire, but only scattered clouds. The Challenger heading into light headwinds, landing in a southeasterly direction. The spacecraft will approach across the state of Florida, crossing Orlando, spreading 2 sonic booms in its wake, a noisy salute to the tens of thousands of spectators already lining the roads in this area. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
CBS News, this is Rob Armstrong. In just about 15 minutes, the Space Shuttle Challenger is scheduled to return to Earth at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Jay Jones is there and brings us up to the minute.
And Challenger is making a superheated return to Florida. The spacecraft re-entered the Earth's atmosphere over the Hawaiian Islands. Friction built up tremendous temperatures as high as 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And that heat strips electrons out of the air around the shuttle, creating an ionized shield that prevents voice communications. But Challenger plunges on, and in a couple of minutes it will leave that communications blackout more than 30 miles high over the Gulf of Mexico, streaking across the skies at 11 times the speed of sound. Challenger will then execute some gradual turns, S-turns, to test its wings, and down the spacecraft will come, traverse the western shore of Florida, plunge across the center of the state, trailing a pair of sonic booms, and then bank left over Cape Canaveral, where the weather is good at sunrise. We're looking up into clear blue skies, the only clouds far off into the horizon. The spacecraft is to approach the runway from the north. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.
10th flight of the Space Shuttle is set to end with one final first, the first landing at the Kennedy Space Center, making this the first round-trip flight back to the Kennedy launch site. I'm Doug Miller, along with Chris Peterson at the Johnson Space Center with live coverage of the launch of Challenger.
Doug, Challenger now soaring high in the atmosphere over the Gulf of Mexico. It's been slowing down from 25 times the speed of sound to less than 5,000 miles an hour. It passed just south of Houston about 6 o'clock. Shuttle should have first felt the heat of the Earth's atmosphere about 18 minutes ago as it dropped below 400,000 feet. It's falling at 200 feet per second. That is quite a significant drop. The Mission Control Center here in Houston has been having trouble locking onto Challenger for data. However, that does not present a problem. That is not a necessary thing. Vance Brand is flying it now. Once it got under 44,000 feet, he is in control of the shuttle. It's a beautiful day down at Cape Canaveral. And once again, right now, let's go back to Doug Miller. The landing is now only 7 minutes away.
That's right. At this point, we're getting our first views of the Challenger as it comes in over the Kennedy landing site. As a matter of fact, we can make out the form of the Challenger as it goes around the heading alignment cone, making the big curve as it comes in toward the runway. We can see a beautiful scene of the shuttle. The weather at the Kennedy Space Center landing site, very good. Forecasters as early as launch day were looking at climatological data, predicting a 66% chance that landing day weather would be good for a touchdown at Cape Canaveral. And just minutes ago, Chief Astronaut John Young took to the skies over the shuttle's runway in a shuttle training aircraft. Earlier this morning, the crew was radioed a report by Capcom John Blaha, and it was a good report.
Cape's weather is clear and 30 miles visibility.
Super. Hey, thanks, John, for getting us that kind of weather. John Young.
Beautiful weather over the Cape. In short, good weather for landing at the Kennedy Space Center. And just to make sure, astronaut Ken Mattingly has been flying a shuttle simulator this morning, a simulator program with the weather conditions now prevalent over the Cape. Beautiful scene there, Chris.
Yes, indeed, Doug, and he is now right on the ground tracks from what we're hearing from the Mission Control Center. It is a beautiful day, as we said. It should be no problem. He does apparently have an I-bar alignment with the runway as he's coming in. They're traveling about 6,000 feet right now, and they're probably going about just a little bit under the speed of sound, which would be about 700 miles an hour.
In other words, the folks over there in Florida should be hearing the sonic boom any old second now, if they haven't heard it already. Haven't any reports coming into the boom just yet. 46 miles out right now. So as the shuttle glides earthward over the Gulf of Mexico. We're landing there. We're just about 5 minutes, 29 seconds away. Our live coverage of Challenger's landing at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida continues right after this.
Non-automatic. Flight dynamics officer reports the energy level in the orbiter is perfect.
The Space Shuttle Challenger coming in for the first landing at Cape Kennedy. Doug Miller along with Chris Peterson at the Johnson Space Center with live coverage of Challenger's landing. An important first in the history of this nation's burgeoning space transportation business. A first that saves the better part of a week in the turnaround time before the next flight. This time, on the last flight, we were biting our nails. And folks here at NASA sighing with relief about the time they saw the shuttle coming in for its landing. Big problems last time, Chris.
That's right, Doug. There were some rather hair-raising moments on last mission's landing day. Commander John Young preparing to bring Columbia home after 11 days in orbit. With the Space Lab in the back end, he fired the forward reaction control jets to change the attitude of the shuttle. At that point, he reported feeling an unexpected kick in the pants and a loss of 2 of the 4 general-purpose computers on board. That can be critical because even though any one of the 4 can handle the duty by itself, a vehicle as complicated as the shuttle requires backup systems just in case. Flight controllers later recovered one of the 2 failed computers. The other one was a total loss. Post-flight investigation revealed a simple piece of solder was jarred loose when Young hit the fire button on those forward jets. That wasn't all, though. Columbia made its final approach to Edwards Air Force Base out in California. Mission Control noticed trouble brewing in one of those unreliable auxiliary power units. After touchdown, a hydrazine leak in one of the APUs caused an explosion and fire near Columbia's tail. NASA looked closely at that one and decided that the corrosive hydrazine fuel was just in the APUs a little too long. That caused the leak sufficient to start the fire, and if you notice, there have been no APU problems detected on this flight.
As a matter of fact, just a few minutes ago, Chris, we got the report that the APU is doing just fine, and as a matter of fact, we're getting a report out of the shuttle right now. Everything's going on just fine. You know, Chris, I think this is the best view that those chase planes have given us ever of the shuttle coming in for its landing.
Very true, Doug, and the lighting angles are extremely good on this one. Charlie Justice from the Houston Center here out in aircraft operations out at Ellington flying the T-38 that is close and giving Commander Vance Brand a little bit of an assist out there. It's always good to have a second pilot's viewpoint, especially when you only have one shot to land it.
Yes, indeed, especially on a flight like this, because this flight has been fraught with failures, minor ones, major ones. Even Commander Vance Brand at a news conference this time yesterday admitted that there was some disappointment, especially with the Palapa and Westar satellites that fired into the wrong orbit. Of course, those problems were not the fault of the shuttle. They were the fault of the malfunctioning payload assist modules, the boosters that were supposed to have kicked the satellites into higher orbit. But the 2 other disappointments were problems blamed on shuttle equipment, the balloon that tore apart, canceling what was supposed to have been the first rendezvous in space, and the stiff wrist in the shuttle's arm that scrubbed the most important part of the second spacewalk. But, of course, those spacewalks were otherwise spectacular successes. The jet-powered manned maneuvering units have been declared fit for their next flight. The satellite repair mission set for April. And as President Reagan told the crew in a long-distance phone call,
Daddy, it's just great. You've really opened a new era for the world in space with this mission. You've shown both our commercial partners and our foreign partners who play an important role in this and other missions to come that man does have the tools to work effectively in space.
And indeed, they have proven that on this flight, especially with those jet-powered manned maneuvering units. We're now about 1 minute away from landing.
Okay, 1 minute, as you say. Let me give you just a little idea of what's going to be happening here. They will deploy the landing gear, which they only have one shot to do that, too. Keep in mind that there is no power. You can't say, uh-oh, I'm a little bit off. I'm going to power up, turn around, and try it again. So at about 195 feet above the runway, and they'll be traveling at right around, 300 knots or so. They will make that initial push to deploy the landing gear. We're now getting some spectacular views as they pick up some of the ground track. He's now less than 30 seconds away from touchdown. He's been having the nose pointed down at a 22-degree angle of attack. He's now leveling off into what is known as the pre-flare. We should be getting the landing any moment. We see the swamp. The landing gear is down. Keep in mind, this is a concrete runway. The very first time this has ever been attempted, especially on a spacecraft flying this fast and this heavy. He's now out in his flare motion. You can see some of the reaction control thruster jet firing on the tail. He's coming in. He's only a few feet, and we have a touchdown. A successful touchdown at the Cape, but it's not over yet. This is a small runway. It is concrete. He is still not have the nose gear down, and he's still got it up, which means he's flying too fast. He's now bringing it down to a perfect touchdown. All three wheels are down. The Columbia, or rather the Challenger, is now rolling out on the concrete runway at the Cape. But keep in mind, he doesn't have an unlimited distance. There's water waiting for him at the other end, and alligators and all those wonderful things. He is braking now. It does look like he's got a successful slowdown, and this is a major milestone for the Space Agency to get an orbiter landing here at the Kennedy Space Center.
And there's been quite a bit of reluctance to land the Challenger over there. They tried to do it on Mission 7, of course. Mother Nature said, no way, you're not going to do it this time. They've been a little bit reluctant about that because, of course, they have the swamps on both sides there, Chris. You could go either way, and you've got water. That's why they were very, very anxious to land it at the Edwards Air Force Base both times. The last time they tried
We've just gotten a report out of the Mission Control Center that the Flight Dynamics Officer reports good braking. The Challenger is rolling to a stop in plenty of time, and that was the fear that they had, is could they take a vehicle that weighs over 200,000 pounds, flying at over 220 miles an hour when it touches down, can they brake it in time? They did. It was good, steady braking. He's right on the center line. Vance Brand just made one heck of a landing.
Okay, your still wheels are stopped.
The wheels
Roger
have stopped.
that, Challenger. Welcome home. Fantastic job. Stand by for post-landing delta.
So, Challenger has landed the first space shuttle landing at the Kennedy Space Center.
Post-landing deltas, delete the hydraulic load test, and
everything
we
looking
get in
very
the extended
good there.
Power up, I'll have a few more for you then.
You're listening to the capsule communicator, John Blaha, in Mission Control. They're getting set to go through a rather complicated set of procedures to turn the Challenger off properly. There are still some very highly corrosive, highly toxic propellants inside the Challenger. They tend to vent off a little bit. It is kind of a dangerous situation. Of course, you have those auxiliary power units with that highly corrosive hydrazine fuel in operation now, providing electricity on board. There is a set safing procedure that they will use to turn the Challenger over at the Kennedy Space Center.
And, of course, they're going to have a convoy rolling up the runway pretty quickly to drain the shuttle of all of its fuel and also to get rid of all the corrosive gases, the toxic gases that might be leaking out around it. That convoy rolling up right now to sniff around to make sure there aren't any toxic gases there and to start the procedure of getting the shuttle ready to roll into the convoy and or to roll into the back into its hangar. The convoy rolling up right now and getting ready to take care of everything it needs to do in the hangar to get ready for the next flight, correct, Chris?
That's right, Doug. After Challenger's been safely powered off, as we were just talking about, it'll be given a tow to the Kennedy Space Center's orbiter processing building. There it will get ready for its next mission, which is coming up in April. That process includes a thorough inspection of the engines and other key shuttle systems. It's kind of similar to a thorough inspection you might give your car before taking a long, extended vacation trip or something. Then it's over to Kennedy's huge vehicle assembly building, where Challenger will be connected to the orange external fuel tank and the twin solid rocket boosters. From there, out to the launch pad 39A for the solar maximum repair mission. Now, as we reported yesterday here on KTRH, that flight is set for April 4th officially, but it may not go until a couple of days later than that. The failing satellite in orbit that the crew will be chasing apparently is not where ground planners thought it would be. It's not a big problem. They may wait until conditions are a little bit more favorable for rendezvousing with the $400 million spacecraft. That should only take a couple of days to determine that. And again, as we get a little bit closer to it, they'll make that decision on what NASA says is a real-time basis. We want to emphasize Glenn Lunny and all of the shuttle program management say this orbiter is in one great shape. It's a great piece of machinery right now. Very few problems, and there's absolutely nothing from a shuttle standpoint that would prevent any kind of a launch in the near future.
And we'll have to keep our eyes and our ears open to see what happens with the Challenger's robot arm that malfunctioned on this particular flight. Doesn't sound like it'll be too big of a problem, but of course they're going to have to work on that, figure out why the wrist was stiff, figure out why they couldn't perform the task they were going to do on the second EVA.
Some of our sources inside the space agency have been talking to us about that arm problem, Doug, and it turns out that apparently they may have been able to use it. It was a conservative call by NASA management, mainly the flight director, which is NASA's policy on things like that. They think it was an electrical problem, and they have several circuits that they can punch up to try and get power into that wrist and try to clear up the problem. What they were afraid of is if you get the shuttle pallet satellite, which was going to act as the target for the manned maneuvering dock, if they got it up there in that position, 50 feet overhead, and there was a malfunction then what do you do? Then you have to go out and you have to crank the arm down, and you go through an elaborate process. You lose some of the objectives of going out on the spacewalk that they accomplished so beautifully. Stewart and McCandless did a wonderful job in kind of turning the tone on this shuttle flight, and as Vance Brand so succinctly pointed out yesterday, the tone is set here on the ground. Those guys had done their job all the way along, and as far as they were concerned, it's been a great flight.
And indeed it has been a great flight, with the exception of the two problems with the shuttle communication satellites, or we should say the communication satellites the shuttle carried into space, and NASA is very sensitive on that point. But at any rate, the Challenger is on the ground, on a runway surrounded by swamps, alligators, and all sorts of other nasty things. Challenger has completed the first successful space shuttle landing back at the Kennedy Space Center, making this the first round-trip flight. We're looking now at some gases coming out of the back of the shuttle there, right?
No, we're noticing that there is none of that venting that we noticed on Columbia, which eventually turned out to be a fire after an explosion. That's good news for all of the folks associated with the auxiliary power units. A gentleman here at the Johnson Space Center named Dick Colonna was the head of that investigating team, and they made a very thorough check, and it turned out that the hydrazine had just been left inside Columbia's APUs too long. It's a very highly corrosive material. Even the APUs material that they're made out of couldn't stand up to it, caused some leaks, so they're just taking better precautions in terms of when they load up those APUs with that hydrazine fuel. We might mention that the APUs use that fuel to produce the electricity. There's a drinking water byproduct. It's a very important piece of machinery, but they've never really had a lot of success with it.
So Challenger has achieved success this morning in the first landing at the Kennedy Space Center. The astronauts now should be climbing off of there sometime in the next few minutes. At least we should be seeing them sometime in the next hour or so as they climb down out of the Challenger. They'll be coming home to Ellington Air Force Base around 2:30 this afternoon. No big ceremony, no hoopla planned for that. A far cry from the old ticker tape parade days, but they'll be home this afternoon. Challenger itself on the ground back at the Kennedy Space Center in a successful and beautiful landing right back at the round trip to the Kennedy Space Center where it was launched 8 days ago. For Chris Peterson, I'm Doug Miller with live coverage of the Challenger landing at the Kennedy Space Center. Doug Miller along with Chris Peterson with KTRH News.
Challenger is back home after a sometimes flawed mission. The Soviet Union prepares to bury Yuri Andropov and choose a successor. Evacuees in Beirut come under Muslim fire. Good morning. This is Bill Lynch with the CBS World News Roundup.
Touchdown for Space Shuttle's first Florida landing. Unofficially mission elapsed time 7 days, 23 hours. Nose gear down. Touchdown at 190 knots.
The Shuttle Challenger landed this morning at Florida's Kennedy Space Center, 8 days and nearly 3 million miles after departing. We have 2 reports on the mission, starting with Judy Muller at the landing site.
Another first for the Challenger today. The shuttle made a picture-perfect first-ever landing back here at the Kennedy Space Center. Commander Vance Brand took over the controls at the end, manually landing the huge spacecraft, now an aircraft, bringing it in right down the center line of the 3-mile-long runway. They couldn't have asked for a better day. Hardly a cloud in the sky, maybe a mild breeze or two. It was an important test for the shuttle. If this commercial aspect of the program is to ever be profitable or break even, the turnaround time and the expense between missions must be reduced. Today's historic landing is a major step in that direction. Judy Muller, CBS News.
This is Jay Jones at the Kennedy Space Center. Shuttle Mission 41B has logged a mixture of success and failure. The primary goal of this 8-day flight was the deployment of 2 communication satellites, combined cost in the neighborhood of $150 million. Challenger delivered, but the birds did not fly right. The booster rockets on both satellites failed to burn long enough, and both packages are circling in useless orbits. Rehearsal for future repair of disabled satellites went awry when a rendezvous balloon burst and the orbiter's mechanical arm suffered a sprained wrist. However, the jet-powered backpacks, the MMUs, performed superbly, and many of the experiments on board Challenger are said to have produced useful information. Jay Jones, CBS News at the Kennedy Space Center.